sometimes learn the words. Sometimes we've learned the words wrong. And I want to diverge briefly. I played a concert a couple of weeks ago of 18th century Scottish music, and one of the songs that were performed was oh gosh, I've already forgot the name. It'll come to me in a second, maybe. The Earl of Murray is the name of the song, and you know, he is killed, and one of the lines is they laid him on the green. But way back when, people misheard the lyrics, and they thought it was the lyrics. Correct lyrics were Lady Mondegreen. And so now, if you hear a song and you get the lyrics wrong, that is called a Mondegreen or Mondegreen. Like my cousin Patty thought the Beatles song "She Was Just 17." My cousin Patty thought the words were "She was just shoveling beans." Okay, so back to talking about learning tunes by ear. So when I first started going to Irish harp classes, and they were only taught by ear, I did feel a lot of embarrassment that I couldn't figure it out. And here were these kids, you know, 12-year-old kids that were learning the tunes faster than I was, or adults that had only just begun playing the harp, and they could learn the tunes faster than I could. I had to come up with techniques to help me learn tunes by ear better. I'd like to think that because it's a difficult thing for me, I'm able to teach it because I know where the challenges are, I think, at least for me. I have found, in general, children do not have a problem learning tunes by ear just because of the way their brains work. And so I'm going to kind of set that to the side. You know, I was paper trained. I will always be better at learning tunes by music. Okay, with your music, like a sight read just about anything, throw it in front of me, I can do it. Learning by ear will always be more of a challenge for me, but that doesn't mean that I stop doing it. Especially in Irish traditional music, there's a certain amount of style that is not going to be on the page. And you need to listen to players, and don't just listen to harpists, by the way. Listen to all of the other instruments play tunes. And of course, there's different styles around in Ireland, okay? Donegal is different from Clare, etc. If you are starting to teach by ear, you want to work with ear training. There's certainly ear training exercises that we learned as you know, if you have classical music training. There's certain things that can help with that. I found that my college music theory training did not help me identifying a third or a fifth. It didn't really help me, but I'm not always good with abstract concepts. I think one way to maybe get a student on the path of it on their own, in private, at home, without the embarrassment of being in front of a witness, a teacher, would be to ask the student to pick out a tune that they know. It could be something they're familiar with, you know, a hymn, a Christmas carol, a kid's tune, or a pop tune, or whatever it is they like to listen to. Ask them, you know, give them the assignment, you know, to come back next lesson having picked something out, you know, by ear. And I think that can help in the beginning. One of the, I mean, because you know the tune, that makes it easier to you know, learn it by ear. And I think if you were going to start teaching students by ear, you would send them home with a recording on their phone, or their mama's phone, but on their phone. I'm speaking about adults, on their phone, where you record the tune, playing it really, really slowly. In the best of all possible worlds, it would actually be a video with a close-up of your hands. So that would help them with the fingering, because the fingering on the harp, you have to learn the fingering about the same time you learn the tune. Because if you have 4 notes in a row, but you start with your third finger, you're going to end up having to do something funky, and it really does help to have the fingering. So usually when I'm going to teach a tune by ear, I do give that fingering. And some traditional teachers, not all traditional teachers, use certain phrases to help with that placement. And one placement is called a handshake. I'll just give you some of those. I hope you can see my, I hope you can see my fingers. A handshake would be having, oh, excuse me, I have paint on my fingers because I was painting. I'm a crafty girl. Where you have like 3 adjacent strings, you skip a string in between your index and your thumb. So I might tell, as I'm teaching this a tune, I might say a handshake starting up from C, and that would mean that they would put C, D, E, G. Or I might say a handshake going down from G. So they play the opposite direction. Another term would be a teacup. And a teacup is where you have the gap between 3 and 4. Like C, E, F, G. Another term I've heard used is for, say, a root position triad placing. One teacher called it a snowman. Think of, like the head, the body, and the bottom of the snowman. And she called 3 notes in a row, she called that an ant, because it's smaller and they're all next to each other. I'm trying to think if there's others. I use the term a hill, where it's 3 notes up and down. Okay, or a valley. Now, I have also, because also a lot of these things work for me because I think I visualize tunes sometimes in geometric shapes. I see shapes. Whenever I've said that to people, they give me a real funny look, like I have no idea what I'm talking about, but that's how my brain it helps me with visualization. If I have a bit that I'm teaching where, say, where it's like 1, 2, 3, 1, I call that like a curly cue. Okay. If anybody has, I don't have the chat up, but if anybody has any other terms that they use for that type of hand placement, please put it in the chat, and somebody can, Mary or Kimberly can holler it out. So the first thing I do, is play the tune for them, have them record it on their phone, preferably with a video. And one tune I use sometimes, because learning by ear was difficult for me, it's still difficult for me, I always try to have very simple tunes to teach by ear. I'm not going to give you the Handel Harp Concerto to learn by ear, because that would be just like silly. So a tune that I might use, it's a 13th century Spanish tune from the Liber Vermel. It's called Laudamus, and it's 4 measures long, and one of the measures is a rest. And so I tell a student, if you have a harp, you're welcome to follow along on this. I tell the students, put your thumb on the blue string to identify the visual with the harp. Put your thumb on the blue string and 3 down from the blue string, the F. And then 3 up from F, we put our 3rd finger on the F. And then now we kind of do a little sort of a curly cue, starting on the red string, and we have to skip. So it goes C, G, A, and I might say it's going to end on the same note that the second measure ended up. So we go F, E, D, 3 up from the blue string, thumb on the C, the red string, and then they have a rest. Because then if I'm in a class, we play it as a round. Or if it's just a one student, I might have them play it in the left hand as well, and it would be something like this. And then I teach them ways to play that as a solo or singing along with it. So I'm going to start with the most basic thing. Does anybody have any questions so far?
Well, Jane Hyde says, so you're taking useful snippets of the melodic contour that are easily accessible by one hand.
Yes, yes. I have a confession to make. I don't enjoy teaching carillon tunes by ear. It's not something I like to do, because people who learn Irish music, they want to learn carillon tunes. And actually, carillon tunes are not beginner tunes. And they're long strings of eighth notes, or notes that you have to place and replace and cross under and cross over. And it's pretty difficult. I have another tune that I teach that was actually written by an Irish harpist. It's called the Lisnagoon Jig. And I can't remember the composer's name. But it does not involve any colored strings. It's only white strings. And so I might, as I'm teaching to the students, I have them do something where I have them place their left hand fingers on the two colored strings so they don't play it. Or if they accidentally put the finger on the string, it's not going to play. And that sort of like alerts them. But the tune. That's the first half of the tune. When I first was learning it by ear, I just thought, oh my God, this is the easiest tune to learn. And then I find it was written by a harpist. It's like, oh yeah, it fits on the hand. It fits on the hand really, really well. That's nice.
Therese, we have a couple of questions.
Yes.
Lori Musselman wants to know, do you teach by rote for everyone or just students that need it for some reason? And then the other thing is, do you have original sound for musicians on?
Oh, how do I do that?
It should be in the upper right-hand corner.
Thank you for telling me that.
It was okay at first, but then
yeah.
Yeah.
And I was playing too loud. I do not see that. I'm going to click somewhere else. I'm on my tablet, so sometimes
It's very difficult to find that on a tablet.
Yeah. Meeting settings.
I don't know.
If you're on, hi Teresa, if you're on a tablet, it's a setting that has to be fixed before you join the meeting.
Okay, I'll just make sure I play very softly. I think that will work okay, and I'm sorry about that. I'll just try to play softer. Okay, apologize for that.
Stephanie Bennett says that students trying to learn by rote often have a hard time incorporating rhythm. How do you incorporate rhythm?
Does that mean the rhythm of the tune or the rhythm of the left hand?
I would guess the rhythm of the tune.
Of the tune. Mm-hmm. The whole thing. Because they've learned these three fingers, pause, think about it. These three fingers, right. Pause, think about it, and they don't know how to string it together.
Yeah, very good point. Very, very, very good point. Hold on. Very good point. Because when I've been in classes as a student, that's something that's vexed me as a student. Well,
I mean, sometimes depending on what it is, I do something as simple as long, short, long, short, long.
Or I have them do something where they have to do, I might have them tap their foot like a pony, or tap their free hand against their leg or the soundboard of the harp if there's a long note. I generally have not noticed it when I've taught. I haven't noticed. I haven't noticed myself doing that. Yeah, I'll have to think about that. What was there was another question, Mary, that you said. I teach by ear to everyone at their level, because I think everyone should be exposed to it. Just like everyone should be exposed to sight reading, everyone should be exposed to rhythm exercises and note exercises and intervals, everything like that. I try to be pretty comprehensive about it. I have a tune that I am willing to teach you guys if you have a harp handy. If you have a harp handy, I can teach it to you, that I have taught for 2,000 years at our summer harp festival that happens Is this going to be our 25th year, Kimberly?
We are celebrating our 25th anniversary of the Houston Summer Harp Festival. Yes, we are.
Yes, and I have taught this for many, many years, and we always include it in our concert. It's part of our finale numbers, and there is a wonderful video of this with at least 25 kids playing this tune on a beautiful stage. They're in this huge arc. It's on YouTube. One of the parents took it and put it on YouTube. I don't have a link to it handy. I don't know if any Mary or Kimberly can look that up. Probably Mary would be better to look that up. And I will teach you the beginning part of it. And but before I do that, does anybody else have any more questions?
There is another question from Rosemary. She said, how did O'Carolyn do it? He was blind. And she said she is legally blind and has tunnel vision. But, you know, wasn't it because he played with a fixed hand position on a wire harp?
Yeah, according to the research that Ann Heyman has done, she believes that he taught with a fixed position. That is, that he had his hands preset and he didn't always let go. And there were two G strings, two strings tuned below middle C to G, and that's one way they could tell where they were. But also, Carolyn was composing these tunes. So it wasn't just him learning tunes by ear, which I'm sure he learned tunes, you know, by ear that other people played for him, but he was actually composing them. Also, when you live in an oral tradition, you get really good at learning tunes by ear and memorizing tunes. I have seen at Irish sessions, a group starts playing a tune, and this visiting musician, usually Irish, has never heard the tune before. He or she listens to it one time through and then picks up their instrument and starts playing. And by the time the tune has been playing 3 times through, they are playing along with the tune. But also in Irish traditional music, there's these little licks that you're going to hear. You know, there's little licks. Or if a tune is a pentatonic tune, like that Lisnagoon jig, you know, it's an idiom that you speak the language. You speak that language. Yeah.
I'm so pleased. You are the very first person to ever answer that question for me about the blindness. I'm so pleased to hear that. What's the name of the gal you said who has researched O'Carolyn?
Ann Heyman. Ann Heyman has published several books. I don't know if they're still in print. Mary could tell us that.
Is it Hayman?
No, Heymann.
Okay.
And her first book, she taught this. Her first book, she used tunes from the Edward Bunting book that was published in 1798, I think, or 1802. I can't remember the date. Edward Bunting at that time went around to harpists to collect tunes, and one of the harpers he talked to was a harper. English version of his name is Dennis Hempson, and Dennis Hempson was 96 years old, and he was blind, and he did know Carolyn, but he was the only harper that played with fingernails on wire strings, and he played tunes from his youth, and Bunting wrote them all down. And but after a certain point, Hempson said, I don't want to play any more of those tunes because they're from my younger years, and nobody wants to hear that old-fashioned music anymore, and it just brings up sad memories for me. That's all I'm going to play for you. And so Anne studied all this. She wrote this book, and she has a version of the fixed hand technique, and she did that first book. She color-coded it, where the fingers you placed or you damped were done in red ink, and the notes you were actually plucking were done with black ink. It was quite an expensive book because of that. So she's a really, really interesting person. She's not active on social media. I haven't heard from her in a long time. I don't know what she's been up to. But she plays on the left shoulder, the way Irish and Scottish harpers did at that time. So any other questions?
Where would I find her book? Anywhere particular? Amazon? Or?
Well, we don't shop at Amazon when we can shop at Melodies.
Oh, that's correct. Sorry.
I don't know that her books are
Are they available?
available anymore. I've written a note to myself. I'm
Oh,
not sure if they are. I'll look that up for you, and I
oh,
will also look up that clog dance video.
oh yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, I don't remember the name of the mom that posted it, you know.
yeah, I'll find that. And then,
Thank you, Mary.
well, a couple of more things. Jane Hyde. Jane, she says she's legally blind in her right eye, and she seldom has to turn her head because she memorizes by interval, and that's very good. And yeah, that memorizing by interval is super super important. And
I agree. I agree with that because, yeah, yeah. Knowing, I just remember college when we had to memorize, we had to do sight singing, sight screeching and ear straining. We would, like, what is it, a minor seventh or something is the West Side Story song, there's a place, or the Eyes of Texas, was one of the other intervals. And yes, learning by intervals is the best way. So I just remembered another technique. One of the teachers that I have studied with, at sometimes Irish, I almost always hand out music. This tune I can teach you, the beginning of this tune I can teach you right now. There is no music for it. I don't have music for it. And anyway, most of the time they will hand out music to you. Sometimes they don't. But one of the teachers, a Scottish teacher, Judith Peacock, she said, you're trying to get the tune or learn the tune, she said, record yourself playing the tune, looking at the music, and then turn the music over and play along with the recording. And if you just get stumped, okay, you can look at the music again, but then turn it back over. And I thought that was a brilliant way to do it. And another thing you can do is there is an app, I think it's still available, called The Amazing Slowdowner. I've never used it, but on YouTube, you can find videos, you can find harpists teaching tunes, but other instruments as well, and you can slow down the speed, and it does not change the pitch on the YouTube videos. And that's another great way to get where you're learning the tunes.
That's one that I've used personally as well. Like when I'm trying to learn orchestra music or large ensemble music, choral music, and I need to learn it fast. So I need to get the whole thing in my ear, for the rehearsal before I walk into rehearsal. So
Oh yeah.
That's a really good one to use and to suggest to students also. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's that ability to slow it down.
I recorded to AnyTune Pro, and
Yeah.
you can also put the tags at particular phrases, so you can just, quickly tags.
I'm writing that down. AnyTune
Pro.
Oh, right.
And the other one is the Amazing Slowdowner.
Yeah,
Put that
I
in
don't
the
know if
chat as
that's,
well.
yeah, I don't know if that's still available or not.
it is.
Again, it slows
It
it down
is.
with that change.
It is.
Okay, good. Slows
I
it down
use
with that
Yeah,
change of the
I love
pitch.
that app. Yeah.
Yeah.
Therese, I would like to make a comment on being in a classroom and learning from you or from any teacher. I took lessons not from Janet Harbison, but from one of her students up at the Milwaukee Irish Fest. And I can remember in the classroom, people would start playing before they knew what the music was, before they had it in their ear. And it's the same thing when I'm teaching a workshop and students start noodling around. And I think the most important thing is when you are learning by ear is you don't play a note. You do not even bring your hand up to the harp and touch the string until you know what finger starts on what string, unless you can play it in your mind. Do not play. Just learn it and have it in your head first, and then play it. And I found that was really helpful for me, because personally for me, I always got it right, but I waited. I let everyone else noodle around and make all these mistakes, and I'm watching them going, oh yeah, I know all those mistakes. I'm not going to do that. So that's just, and also it's courteous. When you are in the classroom and you are learning from a teacher who's teaching you by ear, it is extremely discourteous to noodle around and experiment. you need to just shut up, pardon me, but you need to be quiet and absorb the sound and watch the fingering and watch the interval before you start. And trust me, that's 75% of learning the tune.
Yes, I agree. As a teacher and as a student in these classes, it's been very vexing. Now, I'm going to take one little sidestep. It is if you have a student that is an early learner, it's hard for them to grab the correct fingerings, because it's a lot to process. If you've been playing a harp a long time, you know that 3 notes in a row, you got to use 3, 2, 1 mostly, so I don't chastise students too much for grabbing what they can in the beginning. Another thing that has been done in these classes is the teacher sings the phrases, just phrases, to the students, and the students sing them back. Now, some students are embarrassed to do that, and I understand that. I totally understand that. But if you can sing it, you can play it. And unfortunately, like if you're in these traditional music, if you're teaching traditional Irish music by ear, students hadn't heard this stuff because they don't live it. They're not in the environment of learning traditional music all the time. So there is that. But yes, also if you are a student in these classes, and as a teacher, if you are teaching a group it's important to state this. I always say, don't talk while I play and don't play while I talk. And listen, but also play softly, because if you have a group playing and there's a mistake, with the way that our instruments project, you can't tell if you're playing the wrong note or if your neighbor is. And frequently I'll play with my if I'm a student, I play with my ear pressed up against the harp so I can hear myself. So it's important as a teacher, if you're teaching a group class, to remember to do that. Any other questions, Mary?
Well, I just want to make another comment. I took a class with Alistair Fraser one time, and he had us singing in all of these Scottish, I don't know what you would call it, Scottish idioms, but we were doing all these dum 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 and really gravelly voice sounding, so that we could physically experience the ornamentation.
Yes, those are called vocables.
And it was pretty embarrassing for me.
Well, that's how they teach, by the way, that's how they teach bagpipers. Yeah, that's how they teach bagpipers. Those teach them by ear, they teach them the vocables. Yeah.
But it worked.
Yeah, oh yeah, definitely. There was a question about making sure the students had accurate rhythm, and I just remembered something that I do. I don't necessarily do vocables, and I don't do 1-eanda, 2-eanda, even though that's the way I was taught. That's my natural instinct to do it. I use words like blueberry, pancake, that sort of thing. And it's kind of a cutesy thing, but actually students, adults and children seem to like it, because they can say to themselves, blueberry, pancake, butterfly, whatever it is. Because they're not you've got the melody and then you've got the rhythm. Yeah. I don't know if that makes any sense, but that helps with the rhythm, I think.
Yeah. There was only one other comment I was going to make. You mentioned all those hand shapes. Carol Kappas, are you familiar with her?
Yeah, oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
Magic hands. Yeah, she's great with everything from the crab to the butterfly to the pancakes. Yeah, stack of pancakes.
I think it helps, and I've had a lot of students tell me it helps. Now, there will be the student that says, you're just giving me one more confusing thing to learn. But I think maybe that kind of student, I'm thinking in particular about one, is kind of resistant, to the idea of learning tunes by ear, and was a little hostile to the idea.
In the beginning, I couldn't absorb it, but it was like a couple of years later, and as I was building chords with intervals on top, and so it started, it's my moment. It makes sense. Yeah.
Good. Somebody said, what was Carol's book called?
It's her thing was she had the magic hands.
Does she have a book called
She had a workshop. I'm going to see if I can see. Let's see. But it'll take me a little bit to find.
Okay, okay, okay.
I'll let you know.
Now, if anybody it doesn't have any more questions, I will teach you, if you have a harp handy, I will teach you the beginnings of this tune that I teach by ear to our harp camp, and all my students play this.
You know,
I mean, if I have a student, once the student has started learning triads, which I introduce triads early, I start teaching this tune. Was there another comment or question?
Oh, I was just, we were talking about, you made the comment, Therese, you said, if you can sing it, you can play it. And there are a couple of piano methods, Kinder Music and Yamaha method, where the kids learn it in solfege first.
Yeah.
And they do not touch the keyboard until they are able to sing it in solfege. And then what they're able to do is transpose it and into 5 different keys, because
Oh my word.
you will know, because they can sing it.
Yeah.
You're absolutely right. If you can sing it, you can play it. Yeah.
And Suzuki method requires daily listening of the CD or the recording of all the tunes in the book, whether you've learned them or not. So the student might be on Twinkle C, but they're listening to all of the tunes in the book all the way to the Jig at the end. And they're not going to learn that tune for a year or whatever their timeline is, but they've been hearing it and hearing it and hearing it and hearing it and hearing it. Okay. All right. I think I'm going to teach you a little bit of this tune. The background of this tune is I learned this tune. Put your F sharps up. I learned this tune from the Welsh triple harp player Robin Hugh Bowen, and there was no music. And I learned to write. I didn't have music paper with me, but I had a little notebook that I was writing notes to help me trigger my memory. God, this is so long ago I learned this. I don't even know if I had a cell phone. Certainly I didn't have a cell phone that had a recording on it. So the way I teach it, you guys that are experienced teachers and stuff, you're going to know there's a certain inversion, but I never, ever, ever mention the inversion because I always know that there's a certain thing that's going to happen. Now I'm going to try to play softly so that the sound doesn't get screwed up. So we put our F sharp levers, and I tell the students first off that we're going to block. We're going to block the strings. Blocking means just placing and moving our fingers just we get an idea of the shape in our hand. So we place a root position G triad in both hands, with middle C being where the left hand is placed around. So we place GBD, GBD in both hands. The next thing, keep your third finger on the G and move the other 2 fingers up 1 string. So we have G, C, E in both hands. I do not say this is a second inversion C triad, because if I say C triad, they will move to a root position C triad. Trust me, they will do this. All right, now, next step, we return to our G triad. Our next step is we keep our thumbs on the D string and we move our other 2 fingers down 1 string. So now we have F sharp, A, D, F sharp, A, D. And now let's go through that process again. Root triad, third finger stays on the G, other 2 move up 1. Return to the root position G triad, thumb stays on D, the other 2 move 1. Now, the next step is we play these triads as block flat chords. I'm going to try to do this softly. And we will usually do it on the count of 4. So 3, 4, 1, 2, 3. I call this the upper chord. Back to G chord. 3, 4. Thumb goes back to D. I call this lower chord. And we start over. Go. G, 2, upper chord. Now these next 2 get just 2 beats. G2, lower 2, G2, G4, I started to say. Okay, let me review that one more time. Ready? 3, 4, G, 2, upper chord, G triad, lower chord, root position G chord. Can we start over? 2, upper chord, 2, G chord times 2, the 2 beats, lower times 2, and then G 4 counts. Okay. Now, I hope everybody has that. I'm not looking on the screen. I don't have the screen where I see everybody. Anyway, any questions so far? No? Okay. This tune is called clog dance, like wooden clogs, and it's meant to be a heavy, imagine, I tell students, imagine farmers dancing with wooden shoes. It's not going to be light and airy and fairy. It's going to be really strong and rhythmic. So the next step, that's just the basics. Okay, now the next step, this is how the first part starts. We alternate left, right all the time, except the very end, our rhythm will change and we'll play the last G chord in unison, both hands. So we start with the left hand on the root position G chord, upper chord, G chord, lower chord, back to G chord, upper chord, 2 G's, 2 lower chord, 2 G's, and then play them together. Any questions? Did everybody play that? Or anybody play that?
No, I didn't.
I don't see anybody typing in any questions.
I love it. I'm on my double strung.
Oh, cool. Okay, you can do it in the
Nice.
same, do it in the same octave. Do it in the same octave if you're on a double strum, because
Yeah.
that'll be more like the triple harp.
Yeah. I love it.
Awesome. I'm not going to show you all the variations. This is a theme and variations. Robin Hugh Bowen learned it from his teacher, who learned it from her teacher. This is like centuries old. This is centuries old. Okay, and there's one point where there's an actual melody, but when I teach it at the summer harp camp, our summer harp festival, the students, the younger students, especially it's their first year, that's all they play. They keep playing that over and over and over, while the students who have returned, who are more advanced, they learn more of the variations. And I'll show you this last variation.
And some students just play one hand.
Yes, and I prefer having them play left hand, even though most of them are right hand dominant and they want to play that right hand. No, play left hand because you can watch it, and also that's on the strong beat. And our left hand needs more work. It always needs more work. Okay, so here it is. I play a little bit of it first to demonstrate it, and they usually jump right on it. Chord, up, and so on until the very, very end. That cadence stays the same. So I'm gonna play the first variation. So 3, 4, up, upper chord, go up, G chord, go up, lower chord, go up, G chord, bless you, go up, upper chord. Now here's our cadence, just 2 G's, 2 lower, 2 G's, and play them together. And there's many more variations. So what are your comments or questions? Does anybody else teach by ear?
I've taught by ear, Therese, and I've had people in the class get mad at me.
Yeah, I get
Because
it.
so many people are afraid of it,
I know.
People are afraid of it. And speaking of that, you are teaching at what is called the Cranu, the Gulf Coast Cranu. That word, I just can't pronounce it, can't spell it, but in Houston, they have Irish studies at the University of St. Thomas, right? And so
Yeah.
you will be teaching 3 days, and the Gulf Coast Harpers, which is our local group, we're going to make sure that we're there for one whole day because we're having our official yearly meeting at your event, at the CRENU event. What does CRENU stand for? How do you spell it?
Oh, I can't remember what they chose that name. My husband's on the committee and they chose that name, and I just like, oh my God. But so when I spell it, I just put CRIINNIIUUII. I just double all the letters.
It's a word that means learning experience or lesson or something in Gaelic.
I don't know. Larry, what does CRENU mean?
Gathering.
It means gathering in Irish.
Okay.
Yeah, it means gathering, which is it's just really, really cool. Yeah.
So we
yeah.
could switch it to the harp teacher's canoe.
Yeah, yeah. It's like whenever you choose a band name or an album name or the name of a tune, try to be at something that like it's okay if it's goofy, but people should be able to pronounce it.
Yes, yes. Well,
Yeah.
I think, teaching by ear, learning by ear, it's just yet another skill that we develop. And I think probably all of us here, we have done some teaching by ear, some teaching by rote, because we've all had those students who are maybe a little bit more naturally or through exposure, their ear is a little bit more developed. In fact, we've had discussions here regarding those students who are resistant to reading music because their ears more developed and they just want to play that way. They want to copy what you are playing. Can you play this for me so I can hear how it goes before I take it home to practice? So I think we've all had, that exposure of demonstrating to students as part of the teaching method in being able to have our rounding out our visual learners and our auditorial learners and our intellectual learners and all of that. So it's just yet another skill. I was also very traditionally trained with piano, and anything by ear would really make me very uncomfortable until much later. And I'm continuing to develop my ear, but I do try to do a little bit of ear training with my students. And I'm just wondering if y'all could put in the chat, do you do ear training with your students? Is it something that you incorporate on a regular basis with your students? I tend to try to rotate a little bit of theory or a little bit of rhythm or a little bit of ear training. Some of my students use the Alfred's theory book, and they have ear training exercises included in that theory book. Other times, with my younger students, I'll just play 2 notes and have them say, did the second note go up, or is it the same, or did it go down? I have my intermediate students identify, is this a major chord or is this a minor chord? So I try to incorporate a little bit of that type of thing so they get more comfortable with what they are hearing. When the students kind of graduate from, oh, the note went up or is the same or went down, what I'll do is I'll play a note and then I'll ask them to try to find that note, and I'll ask them to hum that note first. And when they try to pluck a string or play a key on the keyboard, before they just start hitting more random keys, I'll ask them to tell me, was their note higher or lower? And so that there's a thought process until they can match the note that I played for them. It's just little games, but it does train their ears. I know there must be books and exercises that are much more structured. So if anybody has any suggestions and wants to share anything with that, or in the chat, or open up your mic, I think it's important, and it all kind of goes together. but they do get nervous when we teach this at camp. The ones who, you know, cling to their music, and that was me at that age, it's very uncomfortable. Oh.
There's a question, speaking of by ear, no, I'm sorry, there was a question about, is this by rote or by ear? And actually, for me as a teacher, it's a combination of both. It's a combination of both. I'm teaching them by rote to help their ear.
Mm-hmm.
Because the teaching by rote, it's like you have to do that for fingering. Okay. Now, I won't lie, if I've gone as a student, I always sit to the left of the teacher as close as I can so I can watch his or her hands on the strings. That helps me learn it faster because I'm figuring out what their fingering is. One challenge about students can get emotional, whether children or adults can get emotional about learning by ear. Some children are, you know, perfectionists, and they want to have that security of the music. But for adults, probably more, there's a higher consequence for failure than there is for children. You know, some children just absolutely do not care, but some adults is a higher consequence of failure. Like if you don't drive right, you can get in a car accident, you know, or if you don't do your job right, you could, you know, lose your job, you know, so that's it, or it's issues from their childhood, you know, that people told them that they weren't, you know, ever going to do it right. So, you know, there is that, you know. That's all I have to say about that. Kimberly?
Mm-hmm.
Well, and then Mary Muckle was saying that she's uses the Royal Conservatory of Music
Mm-hmm.
tests and exams, and also Piano Guild also has what they call phases. You can play a program, but instead of playing a song, one of your songs can be what's called a phase, and a phase might be telling the difference between a major triad and an augmented. And just being able to pick that out.
Yeah, I see another comment from Laurie Musselman about speaking of the ear. Do you have any ideas for a student that can't tell if a note is off pitch, too high, or too low? I think a lot of this is a consequence of using electronic tuners, which I'm not going to give up my electronic tuner, but there are times when I've had no choice. You know, when I was a child, I had a pitch pipe that I had to tune to. I had to, you know, play an A or a C and tune it, and then I had to tune in octaves and fifths. And if I am without a tuner, I still do that, and I can do it. And so I don't know how you would incorporate it with your individual student, but it's not a bad idea for students to go back to tuning in octaves and fifths by ear, and then check themselves with the tuner maybe. But some students don't actually, some students might have a challenge with matching a pitch. I had a student once that if I played a note, she couldn't find it on her harp, or she couldn't sing it. And it wasn't that she was being resistant. It was a challenge for her.
I have taught a lot of some difficult piano music by ear because the kids forgot their music. And we were doing online, and I said, oh, you can't find your music? Okay, well, so we would just divide it up into very short segments, but we could learn a whole first section of a sonatina and play it by ear. I surprised myself that they were successful in doing that, but sometimes forgetting the music is like, okay, you're going to forget your music? Well, we're going to learn it anyway.
Right. Yep. Well, and I think too, like going back to what we've seen over the years at Harp Camp with teaching clog dance, that is like the one piece that the students will remember because they have fully internalized it because it was taught that way. So even years later, they can remember that when, you know, they might not even remember anything of the other ensemble music that we do, or the solo that they played at the master class, but they knew clog dance.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
I think it's a different way of internalizing the music, and it really gives them something to show for when you are able to find a piece to teach that way. I know, oh, what's the piece that Cindy Horseman uses all the time? Bum, 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 bum. Bum 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 ba, da, da.
Stand by
Oh,
me.
Stand by me. Stand by me. You know, that is a great one to teach by rote as well. Stepping up, stepping down.
Yeah. Yeah. I want students to have a piece they can, you know, somebody comes over their house. Oh my God, you play the harp. Can you play something for me? Well, they're going to shuffle through their book and find something that maybe they're learning right now. They're working on, you know, it's, yeah, and they get nervous, you know, something like clog dance or whatever tune that you teach by ear that you always are reviewing. It's like they've got the tune at their fingertips. They got them at their fingertips. And, you know, once I teach a student for clog dance, once the student has learned triads, I start teaching this to them, and I teach them the variations as they get more advanced. And even students have been playing for several years, they know the tune. This is an opportunity for us to work on our technique. And, you know, is your thumb high? Is your thumb curved? Are you closing your fingers? You know, are you relaxing? And so on and so on. It has many levels of opportunity for me to teach musicianship, etc. And teaching pulse, you know, strong and weak beats and all sorts of stuff like that.
Well, and they're not having to look back and forth from the music to the strings, losing their place in their music, losing their place on the strings. Their eyes are on their hands.
Yes.
And
yes.
for some of them, it just simplifies things for all of them, actually. Yeah.
Oh, all right. Since I'm the smart aleck teacher, which gets me in trouble sometimes when a student like doesn't bring their music. I like your idea, Mary, but for me, it's like, oh, goody, we get to work on technique for the entire lesson. Yay! They usually don't forget their music too often.
Not after that, anyway.
But it's good for them.
Thank you so much, Therese, for sharing that. Do you have any final words of wisdom? And then we'll see if anybody has any further questions, and we'll wrap it up.
No, I just hope that you integrate it into your lessons. I think it's good for all of us.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. And let's see, anybody else? I don't see any other questions in the chat. Mary, thank you so much for sponsoring this and bringing us together as a community. We continue to learn from each other.
And that's what it's all about. Well, thank you, everybody. And it's just about time to sign off. So I will, and if no one has anything else to say, I will go ahead and stop the meeting.
Oh, by the way, there's something somebody just wrote, Catherine Meiser wrote, differentiating high-low is a learned behavior. Do lots of practice with students listening to the teacher and teacher saying the second note was higher. Okay, good. Then students are, okay, now this is interesting. Also listening and drawing the contour in the air or with a pencil and paper with assistance from the teacher is needed. And that appeals to me because I have that visual thing in my mind. I'm thinking of the shape of the melody. I have a geometric shape in my mind. So I like that too. I like that, Charlotte. Okay.
You know, and then on some level, all of us, when we were really young studying, we must have had a really good ear. How did we learn all that difficult music? Because when we were first studying, I couldn't read all of that. I must have had some kind of a good memory that has somehow disintegrated throughout the years.
No, I learned all my notes and rhythm stuff like within 2 weeks when I was 7 years old. Because I'm a visual learner. And the ear thing never, I know that, and that was not taught to me by my teacher. So that's kind of foreign to me, Mary. That's why you're good at learning things by ear and teaching things by ear too.
Okay, we've got a couple more questions. I think they're both in with clog dance. Can you play it on the triple harp?
Oh yeah, and play it because that's who taught it to me is Robin Hugh Bowen, who plays the Welsh triple harp. And you play it, if you play it, whether you have a double harp or a triple harp, you play it all in the same octave. Yeah. Now, Robin plays this very, very, very fast. He taught it to us because he taught it to us to be playable on a single row harp. That's why it's in opposite octaves, but it sounds absolutely amazing when it's in the same octave. And he plays it super fast. And so on.
And Nell wants to know, how do I find the variations of clog dance? All Therese.
Yeah, you can certainly listen to them on the video, but you never. There's only one variation that you actually play something different. All of them, you're using the same strings and the same fingers that you played. I'm not trying to be coy about it. It's just, it's a long thing to teach, and I think if somebody put it online to teach, I kind of think it should be Robin, and I could ask his permission, but I you know, it's a folk tune. He's taught it to many people, so yeah, I wouldn't put it on. I wouldn't teach the whole thing online for permanently recorded unless I had his permission. I just feel that'd be ethical.
Yeah, the video they're asking about, we're going to try to get that link. And Mary, can you include that in the follow-up when you announce it?
Yep, I wrote it down.
Okay, so once this is posted so that you can go back and look at the recording, she'll have hopefully that included. I think it may be under Houston Baptist University.
I will find
because
I'll find it and send it. I'll find it and send it to Mary.
Okay. Thank you. Great to see everybody.
Thanks, everybody. Have a great rest of your week. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thanks.
See you next month.